Most people crumble when loneliness hits, but not the Sigma male. When he feels the emptiness that others run from, he doesn't collapse, he constructs. That silence they fear, he turns it into a workshop for transformation. When the world grows quiet and no one checks in, he doesn't chase noise, he listens to his own heartbeat, his own ambition, his own truth. That's what makes him different. Loneliness doesn't break him, it builds him. Because while others look for company to feel complete, the Sigma male learns how to become whole alone. He turns isolation into insight, solitude into strength. Every unanswered call becomes a moment of focus. Every quiet night becomes a blueprint for something greater. That's why when he finally reappears, he's not the same man who disappeared. He's sharper, calmer, and more unshakable than ever. If you've ever felt that kind of silence, the one that hurts at first but later becomes your source of power, this video is for you. And before we dive deeper, a quick reminder, over 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. If you want to understand the psychology of power, emotional control, and silent evolution, hit subscribe to UltraWise right now. It's completely free. But what you'll gain here could change how you see yourself forever. Now, let's go inside the Sigma solitude, where loneliness isn't the enemy. It's the forge that shapes legends. Isolation as a catalyst, not a curse. When the Sigma male retreats into isolation, the world assumes he's broken, defeated, or lost his edge. But that's the mistake everyone makes. His solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. When others drown in the noise of constant validation, he sits in the silence that most people can't handle. That silence becomes his forge. Every unanswered message, every plan that fell apart, every person who left, all of it turns into fuel. While they escape loneliness through distractions, he uses it to strip away illusions and rebuild his mind from the inside out. At first, isolation feels heavy, like a weight pressing down on his chest. But as the hours pass and the noise fades, he begins to hear the rhythm beneath it, the clarity that only solitude provides. His thoughts stop racing and start aligning. He stops seeking comfort and starts seeking purpose. It's not about hiding from the world. It's about mastering himself before he faces it again. In isolation, he begins to see his patterns, where he gave too much, trusted too easily, or fought battles that weren't his to fight. And that awareness becomes power. To him, isolation isn't a void, it's a lab. It's where he experiments with discipline, self-control, and the art of emotional detachment. It's where he learns that peace isn't found in people or places, but in precision, knowing where to invest his time, his energy, and his emotions. The world calls it loneliness. He calls it recalibration. When he finally steps back into the world, nothing about him looks different, but everything feels different. His energy is cleaner, his decisions are sharper, his silence carries weight. Because isolation didn't weaken him, it refined him. And that's what most people will never understand. While they're out there trying to fill the void, the Sigma male becomes the man who no longer needs to, turning emptiness into focus. When the Sigma male feels emptiness creeping in, he doesn't fight it with noise. He studies it. While others rush to fill the silence with validation, entertainment, or meaningless distraction, he leans into the void. That hollow feeling most people run from becomes his compass. Because within that emptiness lies every answer he's been avoiding. What truly matters, what no longer fits, and who he really is without the world's applause. The absence of stimulation forces his mind to sharpen. What once felt like a pit of loneliness transforms into a tunnel of purpose. He starts redirecting his emotional energy from reaction to creation. Instead of replaying who left or what failed, he begins building. The emptiness that once haunted him becomes mental real estate, space he can now fill with vision, ideas, and strategy. Each quiet morning becomes a battlefield where he conquers his own chaos. He no longer asks, "Why does this feel empty?" Instead, he asks, "What can I create from this space?" That question alone separates him from the rest. Because where most people collapse under silence, he constructs a new empire within it. The Sigma male's focus is forged in these quiet wars. He learns to see isolation not as a sentence, but as an investment. He cleans out the mental clutter, the false attachments, the constant noise, the opinions that diluted his drive. Slowly, his attention becomes razor sharp. He moves through his days with purpose, his actions minimal but deliberate. The emptiness that once made him restless now becomes the clean foundation for precision, a mind uncluttered by drama, driven only by direction. By the time he emerges, the world doesn't recognize him. They still see the calm exterior, but behind it lies a laser-focused intensity that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't need. What was once a void became vision. What was once loneliness became leadership. The Sigma male understands that focus isn't found in a crowded world. It's cultivated in silence, because when he stopped fearing emptiness, he discovered its secret. It was never a lack of something, it was the space required to build everything. Reconstructing identity in solitude. When the world falls silent and everyone fades into the distance, the Sigma male doesn't crumble. He reconstructs. Solitude becomes his reset button, his quiet battlefield where identity is stripped down to its bare essence. Gone are the borrowed expectations, the roles he played to keep the peace, and the masks he wore to blend in. Alone, there's nowhere to hide. Not from pain, not from truth, and especially not from himself. But that's where his transformation begins. What others fear about being alone, he embraces. The uncomfortable process of meeting the unfiltered version of who he really is. In the stillness, he dissects every layer of himself like a craftsman taking apart a machine to rebuild it stronger. Every past failure becomes a lesson, every heartbreak a blueprint. He begins to understand what fueled him, the insecurities he masked with control, the fears he disguised as independence, and the attachments he called love. One by one, he dismantles these illusions until only the essentials remain: discipline, awareness, and purpose. So it's not self-destruction, it's self-refinement. Reconstructing identity in solitude isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who he was before the world told him who to be. The Sigma male's power lies in his ability to detach from old versions of himself without mourning them. Each quiet night becomes a rebirth, not dramatic, not loud, but precise. He stops defining himself by others' perceptions and starts building his foundation on internal truth. His worth stops depending on connection. It begins depending on alignment. When he finally walks back into the world, he carries a presence that can't be faked. Calm, unbothered, unshakable. People sense something has shifted, though they can't explain it. That's because solitude didn't break him. It sculpted him. The man who entered isolation confused, lost, or emotionally scattered doesn't come out the same. He reemerges with a new kind of power. Identity, built from silence. Confidence, rooted in clarity, and peace that doesn't need permission. That's the quiet miracle of the Sigma male's solitude. It doesn't just change how he lives. It redefines who he is. Silence as a strategic reset. When the Sigma male goes quiet, it's never random. It's a reset. While most people mistake his silence for defeat or disinterest, it's actually the most strategic move in his playbook. Silence is where he reclaims control over his mind, his emotions, and his energy. It's where he detaches from chaos long enough to see the truth clearly. The world runs on noise. constant opinions, validation loops, and emotional distractions. But the Sigma male knows that true power never yells. It recalibrates in silence. In that silence, he's not running from anything. He's studying everything. Patterns, behaviors, his own responses. Every pause becomes data. He listens to what people don't say, reads what's between the lines, and watches who notices his absence. While others chase clarity in conversation, he finds it in observation. His silence exposes what words try to hide. It shows him who respects his boundaries, who only values his presence when it's convenient, and who truly understands without explanations. The quiet becomes his filter, removing what drains him, refining what deserves to stay. Silence is also his recovery zone. It's where he disarms his emotions and rebalances his energy. The constant noise of the world pushes people into reaction mode, but he refuses to operate that way. He doesn't need to prove a point, win an argument, or explain his boundaries. He lets his silence carry the message instead, a message louder than any confrontation could ever deliver. Because when he stops talking, people start hearing their own behavior echo back at them. In that stillness, he rebuilds his strategy. His goals become sharper, his emotions lighter, his mind more efficient. He realizes that silence isn't the absence of communication. It's communication at its highest frequency. It's how he protects his focus, his peace, and his emotional sovereignty. When he finally speaks again, his words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they come from precision, not reaction. That's the true power of the Sigma male's silence. It's not emptiness, it's alignment. It's the pause before the comeback, the stillness before the strike. While others waste energy defending themselves, he saves his for transformation. And that's why, when he resets, everything around him shifts. Mastering emotional self-sufficiency. The Sigma male's greatest evolution begins when he stops outsourcing his emotional balance to anyone else. While most people build their peace on approval, attention, or companionship, he learns to anchor his peace internally, where no one can touch it. This mastery doesn't come easy. It's born from heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment. He's been through enough to realize that depending on others for emotional stability is the quickest way to lose control. So, instead of seeking comfort, he builds it. Instead of needing reassurance, he becomes it. In solitude, he studies his emotional triggers like a scientist. Every reaction, every surge of anger, every pang of loneliness becomes a lesson. He doesn't suppress them, he dissects them. He asks himself why he feels what he feels until emotion turns into awareness. Slowly, he reprograms his instincts. What once made him anxious now makes him focused. What once made him hurt now makes him wise. It's a subtle transformation from emotional vulnerability to emotional sovereignty. Self-sufficiency doesn't mean coldness, it means balance. The Sigma male doesn't shut off his feelings, he simply refuses to be ruled by them. He can love deeply without losing himself. He can care without being consumed. When the world falls apart around him, he doesn't collapse, he adapts. That's his quiet strength. Stability that doesn't depend on anyone showing up for him. His composure under pressure isn't pride, it's preparation. As he masters his emotions, he becomes untouchable in a world addicted to reaction. Manipulators lose their grip, drama loses its pull, and temporary people lose their power. He no longer needs closure or validation because he's learned that his peace isn't a gift, it's a discipline. This is the Sigma male's emotional fortress, built brick by brick from solitude, awareness, and hard-earned self-trust. While others seek love to fill their emptiness, he brings wholeness to everything he touches. That's why people can't figure him out. He's too calm, too grounded, too self-contained. But that calm isn't luck, it's work. Emotional self-sufficiency isn't something he was born with. It's something he earned through pain, and now that he has it, nothing and no one can take it away. Building purpose from the pain. Pain is where the Sigma male does his deepest work. While most people spend their lives running from it, he walks straight into it, not to suffer, but to study. Every disappointment, betrayal, and heartbreak becomes raw material for transformation. He doesn't let pain define him, he lets it refine him. The moment he stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What is this teaching me?" the pain loses its power to destroy and becomes a blueprint for growth. Inside his solitude, he treats pain like data, emotional evidence that reveals what needs to change. He dissects it piece by piece until clarity emerges. The rejection that once crushed his spirit now sharpens his vision. The heartbreak that emptied him becomes the reason he fills his own cup first. The betrayal that broke his trust becomes the lesson that rebuilds his discernment. The Sigma male doesn't heal by forgetting, he heals by integrating. He uses pain to restructure his beliefs, his habits, his purpose. As he rebuilds, something shifts. His energy, once reactive, becomes creative. Instead of seeking justice, he seeks mastery. Instead of trying to prove his worth, he channels that fire into discipline. The same emotions that once weakened him now fuel his ambition. He realizes that pain, when understood, is power in disguise, a catalyst that forces him to evolve beyond comfort. The Sigma male's purpose is never born from ease. It's forged through silent nights of questioning everything, through the uncomfortable realization that strength isn't about endurance, it's about alignment. Each wound becomes a map, pointing him toward what truly matters, and as he follows that map, he begins to build something unshakable. A life not controlled by external validation, but guided by internal mission. People see his calm and mistake it for detachment, but it's actually direction. He's not escaping his pain, he's building from it, crafting meaning out of moments that once felt meaningless. That's his hidden genius. He takes what tried to break him and uses it as the foundation for something far greater. The Sigma male doesn't just survive pain, he turns it into purpose, and that's why he always rises stronger than before, not because life spared him, but because he learned how to rebuild from every scar. Transformation through solitary growth. When the world goes quiet, the Sigma male begins his true evolution. Solitude is not his escape, it's his forge. While others need noise, validation, and distraction to feel alive, he retreats into silence to rebuild himself from the ground up. Growth for him doesn't happen in front of people. It happens in the invisible hours when he's alone, analyzing every failure, every emotion, every lesson that life threw his way. The Sigma male doesn't run from stillness, he thrives in it, because in that stillness, the noise of others fades, and the truth of who he really is finally speaks clearly. Solitary growth isn't glamorous, it's long nights of reflection, uncomfortable self-awareness, and the courage to face what he once ignored. He breaks down his own patterns piece by piece, confronting the habits and beliefs that kept him small. There's no applause, no external validation, only quiet progress. Each day, he sharpens his discipline, strengthens his mental endurance, and rebuilds his focus. He learns to separate what he wants from what he needs, what's temporary from what's essential. Slowly, isolation transforms into revelation. In this phase, the Sigma male becomes both the sculptor and the sculpture. He shapes himself with precision, chiseling away the distractions, doubts, and dependencies that once blurred his path. The same solitude that once felt heavy now becomes empowering. He starts to understand that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means being in control. Every boundary he sets, every routine he builds, every dream he quietly pursues, they all come from the foundation. He's built in that sacred space of solitude. When he eventually returns to the world, he's unrecognizable. Not because he's changed drastically, but because he's become fully aligned. People notice the difference in his energy. He speaks less, but his words carry weight. He engages less, but his presence commands attention. His solitude has transformed him into something rare, a man who no longer needs approval to feel worthy or company to feel complete. That's the essence of the Sigma male's transformation, growth that happens unseen, powered by solitude and discipline. While others crumble when left alone, he evolves. Because for him, solitude isn't punishment, it's power. It's where the next version of himself is born, sharper, calmer, and infinitely stronger, returning stronger, quieter, and unshakable. When the Sigma male finally reemerges from his solitude, he doesn't announce it. There's no dramatic speech, no declaration of his comeback. He just returns, refined, focused, and unrecognizable in his calm. The people who once doubted him feel the shift before they even see it. His silence is no longer about withdrawal, it's about control. His energy, once scattered by disappointment, now moves with purpose. He speaks less, but every word lands with precision. He acts less impulsively, but every move hits with impact. The man who once carried invisible wounds now carries quiet power, forged in solitude and sharpened by pain. What they don't realize is that his transformation didn't happen overnight. It was built through months, maybe years, of inner reconstruction, removing attachments that drained him, rewriting beliefs that limited him, and mastering emotions that once ruled him. He's no longer moved by validation or thrown off by rejection. He's not seeking revenge or recognition, he's seeking alignment. The world that once overwhelmed him now seemed smaller, not because it changed, but because he grew beyond it. People notice something different about him now. His calm makes others nervous, his presence feels heavier, his silence more commanding. That's because he's not trying to prove anything anymore. The Sigma male has learned that true confidence doesn't need to be seen, it needs to be felt. And when he walks back into spaces that once drained him, the same people who underestimated him can't quite figure out what's changed. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. He's stronger because he's no longer reacting, quieter because he no longer explains, unshakable because he's no longer attached to outcomes. His strength isn't loud, but it's undeniable. He's reached a point where nothing external has power over his internal peace. And that's what makes him untouchable. This is the final evolution of the Sigma male. The silent rise after the fall. The calm after the chaos. The peace that no storm can disturb. His strength was never meant to impress, it was meant to endure. And now, as he moves through the world with effortless composure, people finally see what solitude really built. Not a man who hides, but one who's too grounded to ever be shaken again. Dennis Gaiman. Every Sigma journey is built on silence, resilience, and self-mastery. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, that quiet strength, that hunger to evolve alone and come back unshakable, then you already understand what it means to walk this path. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to keep building, even when no one's watching. To somewhat, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and right now we're sitting at 720. If you've made it this far into the video, you're not just a viewer, you're part of a rare mindset. So take a second and hit subscribe. Help us reach that 1K mark this month and grow this movement of quiet power. Drop a comment below. What's one thing solitude has taught you about yourself? Your story might be the reason someone else keeps going. Stay sharp, stay calm, and as always, stay ultra wise.